Hello, hello. How are you today? Welcome back to Project Land for those of you who are not new to this channel. I'm super excited about today's event. If you are not new, or if you are new, let us know in the chat. Welcome to all. In the comments, let us know where you're dialing in from today. It's always a fun game to see where you're dialing in from. I am in my home in the Florida Keys where it is sauna season here in August. It feels like a sauna outside all the time. So welcome back to those of you who have been here with us before, and to those of you who are new, welcome. We're so glad you're here. So today, our goal is to help you make informed decisions about standards, certification, and practical project leadership. We are going to be talking about the new PMBOK Guide, PMBOK 8, and what it means for your career, what changed, why it changed, and how we really feel about things. So we're going to get real here in Project Land, as always. So today you're going to hear from two very special guests who, if you're not new to Project Land, have been with us before. They were special guests in our Project Land Goes to the Movie series, and they gave us beautiful endorsements for that book. And so I'm so excited that they decided to join us once again to share their insights about PMBOK 8 and just your project management journey in general. No matter where you are on your project management learning journey, you're going to get something out of today's session. So today we're going to hear from Mike Hannan, who helped create PMBOK 8. He's one of our co-authors of PMBOK 8. And Crystal Richards, who's one of the leading PMP exam prep experts and author of PMP Exam Prep for Dummies. And of course, me. Hi, if you don't know me, hi, I'm Dawn Mahan. Usually, all I want to talk about is practical project management and setting people up for success in the real world. However, today's topic is important to me too. So I don't know if you know this, but under PMBOK 4, I created the Project Flow Process Learning System to make learning, not memorizing, learning, PMI's complex gold standard process easy and fun through gamification, design thinking, and storytelling techniques, all woven together. And then I updated it for PMBOK 5 and 6. And so I've lived through a number of these PMBOK guide changes. And of course, now we have PMBOK 8. If you are listening closely, you noticed I didn't say anything about PMBOK 7. It's because 7 referred to the process in 6, so no update was needed. So what you'll see today is there are changes in PMBOK 8 that impact the process flow. So if you're a PMP and studied under a previous edition, drop that edition in the chat right now. Mine is 2. I studied under the 2nd edition of the PMBOK Guide over 21 years ago now. And so seeing lots of these changes, everybody's got opinions about them. You're going to hear from the experts today about what we think about these new changes and what it means for you. So I'm super glad you're here. Let us know what edition you studied under if you're a PMP. And today, no matter where you are in your project management learning journey, you should leave knowing what the key changes are in PMBOK 8 at a high level, why the changes were made, and what education fits your next step so that you can continue developing as a project leader. So if that sounds good, I'm so glad you're here, and just say yes. All right, so we want to hear it from you all throughout the session. Please ask your questions. That's one of the benefits of being here live. And we have a little update here. Let's see. So we've got Ben dialing in from London. We've got Maryland folks. I know who you're here for. We've got Jerry. So he's usually my co-host. He's off today, but he's with us. Wonderful. And we've got a LinkedIn user who must not be dialed in to their account right now, but we're so glad you're here. It doesn't matter. Greetings from Northern Virginia, and happy you're here. And we've got Riyadh in the house. Chicago. Awesome. And we've got Professor Jesse here, PMBOK 3, no kidding. And we've got 6, we've got another 6, we've got 7 represented. We've got Mike Schaefer, one of our co-authors as well, along with Professor Jesse. Awesome, this is amazing. And Boston University, hey there, hi Rich. What did you study under? So glad to see you. And we've got, look at this, New York in the house, Minnesota, beautiful, and more and more and more. So please keep that chat lighting up, the comments lighting up. We love to hear from you. And so with that, what I'd like to do is introduce our special guests. If you're not familiar with them, you'll get to know them and probably love them just as much as I do by the end of our session together today. I'm so glad they're here. So first, we are going to introduce our first special guest today, and he is co-author of the PMBOK Guide 8th Edition. He's also an adjunct professor at USC's MS in Project Management program and is the founder of Fortezza Consulting. He spent decades helping organizations maximize portfolio impact. He's got some magic tricks up his sleeves for that. So welcome back to the Project Land stage, Mike Hannan.
Woo! Hey, Dawn. Thanks for having me back. Good to be here.
I'm so glad you're back. Thanks, Mike, for joining us. We can't wait to hear some of the behind-the-scenes stories about making the PMBOK Guide 8 from you. And so will you help me bring up our next guest expert? She's a global keynote speaker and has trained over 65,000 professionals. That's a lot to think like project managers. She's the owner of MindsparQ and the author of PMP Exam Prep for Dummies, which is now available for pre-order at your favorite bookstore. And we have some news for you later about how you can meet her in person, especially if you're in the Maryland area. You'll want to hang on for that very soon. And so welcome back to the Project Land stage, Crystal Richards. Yay! So glad you're here. So Crystal and I, Mike, prepared some questions for you. Okay. So she may add some color commentary for this, which is usually I wait to have the expert guest, come in a little later and just have you on. But today, Crystal was like, I want to talk to Mike about this. I have questions, right, Crystal?
I'm so glad we were like finally connecting, Mike.
Yeah, we crossed paths, Crystal, here and there, but I was shocked to learn through this process that we weren't even connected on LinkedIn. So we fixed that.
I know.
Yes. Good. Bringing the experts together. Awesome. I love it. So let's get behind the scenes now on PMBOK 8. This is the news that you will not get probably from anybody else. So here's the thing. I would love to know, and in your own words, Mike, how a PMBOK guide is created like this. How do you do this? Tell us.
Yeah, so let me, I think it's important to start by saying, if you had told me 3 years ago that I would be a co-author of the PMBOK Guide, I would have told you 50,000 things I would have rather done with my free volunteer time. I would have thought you were absolutely nuts. And that's not because I don't care about project management. I care deeply about our profession, and I'm kind of a nerd. And so, I've read many iterations of the PMBOK Guide over the years, not just the one I was tested on, back in PMBOK 3. But I just didn't think that would be anything that would be worth my time. I thought, the worst thing I could imagine was authoring anything by committee. Right, having 12 or 13 authors trying to agree on what the thing should look like, and all the silly arguments that are probably going to happen, and and my best ideas might get watered down, and all that kind of stuff, right? But the chair of the PMBOK Guide that PMI appointed, Jesse Fuel, who has now been on the dev team, he's been a co-author of the PMBOK Guide since PMBOK 5, so half of the PMBOK Guides in existence, Jesse has co-authored. And he said, Mike, I want you to be part of the team. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, no thanks.
I have maybe one more book in me, and it'll be authored by me alone, if it happens at all. And he was like, okay, and how many people will read that book? And I said, I don't know, maybe 10,000 if I'm lucky. And he's like, right. So how many people do you want to read your good ideas? I was like, yeah, but how many people really read the PMBOK Guide? You use it to study for the exam. And he's like, well, do you read it? I was like, actually, yeah, but I'm a nerd. He's like, well, there's a lot of nerds out there. A lot of people care about this stuff. Millions of people will read it, or I don't know, hundreds of thousands, some big number, bigger than had I written my own book, another one of my own books. So long story short, he convinced me. And I will tell you, I'll cut right to the end. It was the most enriching professional experience of my entire life.
What?
It was an amazing team of 13 total people. All had a very similar value first mindset. And maybe that dives right into answering your question. How does a PMBOK guide get written? Well, we had a few points of guidance from the get-go.
Okay.
One was, hey, the 7th edition was the first one that had the following sentence: project management is a system for value delivery. Now, that might be obvious, or like we don't need to state that to know it's true, but it is the first PMBOK guide that said that. And a lot of people actually still have some problems with that, right? That, you can't ask PMs to be accountable for value. They have no control over that. A lot of that is subject to the vagaries of the marketplace and what customers buy and what they don't buy. And you can't hold a PM accountable for that.
And some of that's very true.
Some of it is grounded in some real world assumptions, for sure. And yet, the reason we do projects is to elevate our world. Right? We want something better than the status quo today. And we're willing to risk money and effort and reputation and resources, time to generate what we hope will be better. And of course, there's no guarantees. Like any investment, there's no guarantees that it will be better, but we have faith that it should be and could be. And we PMs, I argue, want to be stewards of our organizational resources that can drive that better elevated world. So that was our first order of business was, you must take what PMBOK 7 did and amplify on it. PMBOK 7 was brief, thankfully, mercifully, but it left a lot out, like a lot of the techniques on how. Well, okay, that sounds nice, if you agree with it, as I do, and all 13 of us did. Well, then how? What techniques should we actually apply to drive that value? Because as we just discussed, not everything is on the value side of the equation is really under our control, right? So what techniques can PMs use that are under our control and that can drive that kind of high impact result and outcome that organizations are seeking when they undertake projects? So that was one. Two, they said, some of what the 7th edition left out that had been in the 6th, and you said, Don, like, nothing changed from the 6th, just use the 6th. But then PMI didn't allow you to download the 6th after a certain amount of time. And so you couldn't even get access to it unless you'd already gotten it, 2 years earlier or whatever. So they said, look, we need to actually bring some of that discipline back. It doesn't have to be identical, right? It can be improved if you see room for improvement. But some of that detail, what we used to call, the knowledge areas and process groups, which now are called focus. The knowledge areas are now called focus areas. And now I goofed it. The process groups are called focus areas, and the knowledge areas are called performance domains. Some of that shifted before the 8th edition, and we can get into why those changes happened if that's of interest.
Well, those are some of
the discipline.
Yeah, those are some of the strong reactions I'm hearing, about why did you change knowledge areas? Why did you change process groups? What was so bad about all that, right? Like what, those are some big changes. And Crystal's going to share with us a little later more about that and how it all fits together. But that's evoking some strong reactions. So what I'm wondering is, maybe we can get this in this next question we have for you is, of the things that were the biggest debates, right? Can you help us understand some of the problems the team was trying to solve with these decisions, like changing the words?
Yeah, let's start with that one. Again, I think the knowledge areas were rebranded as performance domains under PMBOK 7. So I think we just inherited that. Although they didn't have that table that often appears in the PMBOK guide mapping all, what used to be the process groups and knowledge areas in one giant matrix.
I take issue with the table, by the way. But that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, I love tables in organization, but
so the logic behind the performance domains was, it's not just knowledge for the sake of knowledge, it's for the sake of driving performance, right? And so let's be clear on that. It's not knowledge for knowledge's sake. The focus areas was a bit stickier.
Okay.
There was a lot of criticism, mostly from the agile world, that by calling them process groups, you're sticking people into these very waterfall-like, sequential processes, which for some people suggests that we can't do things like, thou shalt not start anything in, thou shalt finish all the initiation, right, before you can get into any of the planning. And of
Right,
course,
and
that's
we
not
know
true.
that doesn't always happen, right?
It's not necessarily true, but that vibe, the criticism was coming at PMI pretty hard and pretty heavy. So it's like, okay, well, I think there is a logical process sequence there, even if it's not a hard, waterfall like dividing line or barrier. But that, you probably do want to finish the initiation stuff before you start any closing, for example. Right?
Yeah, hello.
Like there is a sequential flow there that makes some sense. But the chair of the group, the guy Jesse I just mentioned, he basically said, look, guys, let me just take that one. I'm going to come up with an answer. I don't know what the answer is just yet, but that's on me. If I come up with a bad one that people hate, let everyone hit me with it. And he just came up with focus areas.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I personally prefer process groups, but I'm okay with focus areas, and I'm okay with understanding that it doesn't have to be this sort of hard sequential process, even though there is sequence there that makes sense, right?
So is that what happens? So around the table, these issues that you need to solve or address in the new guide are brought forward, and then you have great debates about what that means and how to solve them. And then you have to come to some kind of conclusion.
Yeah, in that case, Jesse just took it under his own task list, right? And we were fine to let him do it. But other things, like why do we call it finance instead of cost? Right? Why do we change that? Right?
That was one of Crystal's questions.
Well, if projects are about value, then that's bang for the buck. There's a value side of the ledger, not just the cost side, right? And managing your cost baseline is important, but managing the project in a way that strengthens its value proposition as much as possible is more important. And so a value proposition is a financial question, not just a cost question, right? It's bang for the buck. So what is the value per dollar invested? And so we said, well, for too long, finance people have often felt like they're not part of the project world. Our only job is to approve the budget and release the funds. And then when you go over budget, we slap you, right?
Right, yeah.
Or if you ask for more money, we tell you no. Well, what if by going 50K over budget, I could generate $1 million in additional value? Now, the organization might not have the additional 50K to go over budget. And so that's a shame, but we can't do it. And it's not up to the project manager, in my view, but it is up to the project manager to raise their hand and say, hey, guys, I think I have a way we could generate even more value here. Would you like to hear it?
Nice.
And I think too often that has not happened. Project managers don't see that as their job. But if it's not their job, like no one else is in as good a position as the PM to see those opportunities. Right. And to raise their hand and say, hey, if we're really trying to get maximum bang for the buck, I got some options for you.
Right. Or at least facilitate those conversations.
And if I'm not financially savvy, well, I should have a finance partner that helps me think through some of that, and we should have a collaboration. Right. So we just felt like rather than, it's not the cost accountants usually that are going to help us come up with, stronger value propositions from a financial point of view. It's finance people.
Nice. So that makes some sense on why finance is now the word versus cost management in previous editions. I like it. Another question that it freaked me out when Crystal and I were geeking out on this one day. We were both very surprised. She goes, she shows me the table in PMBOK 8, right? My favorite thing. And she says, what's missing? And I looked for a couple of seconds and I was like, where did quality go? Where did quality go? What happened to quality? It got sucked into some other areas. So that had to be a great debate. Mike, tell us about this decision.
We just decided quality didn't matter. No, just kidding.
Yeah,
That's not what we were discussing. We thought about it and debated it pretty strongly that quality, if you make it its own dimension, as if it were completely separate from the cost, schedule, and scope elements of a baseline, that you're really kind of artificially extracting it from something that it should be very tightly integrated into. And that's usually scope. Usually the types of quality thresholds we're asked to hit as PMs are elements of scope. And to pretend that they're not often can present it as a trade-off, like, should we add more scope or reduce quality? And in my mind, that's sort of a false trade-off. right?
Mhm.
Those are just scope trade-offs, and you might trade them off with, cost or schedule perhaps, but usually the quality thresholds are there for a reason. And there might be some wiggle room in quality, but you probably don't want to mess with that too much before you start to harm the value that the scope is there to drive. And so our thinking was, yes, there are quality attributes occasionally to like executing on schedule. But even there, the reason that schedule might matter is that we want the scope by a certain time, or else it starts to lose value, right? Value can fall off a cliff if we don't make Black Friday with our new toy, right? If it's not on the shelf, right? So there might be quality aspects of hitting schedule reliably, but we felt like that's more, and that's more in the trade-off analysis that good PMs are already doing on cost, schedule, and scope. So let's acknowledge, in my mind, we were elevating the importance of quality, even though, and I tried to write verbiage in the PMBOK guide to make that very explicitly clear.
Okay.
Because of course we should care a lot about quality, and then also I personally have seen a pattern where the quality people talk about improving quality for the sake of improving quality.
Oh.
And the point is, like, quality is not its own dimension off by itself, and it doesn't have its own value prop, right? It's attached to something, usually scope, right? And we don't do it because we're quality people and we care about quality and we like to minimize defects. We do it because a certain threshold, like there's no such thing as zero defects, right? And if we try to pursue that, we could spend a lot of money and still not get there. And we could actually harm the value prop of the project.
And so, little side note, that was one of my biggest issues when I was dealing with Six Sigma folks, was like you get a process to squeeze the orange, get the juice out of the orange, and they just want to keep squeezing and squeezing and squeezing. And, how can I get one more drop out of that orange? And it's like, guys, like it's done. Like we got as much as we need to get out of it. Let's move on. And
by the way,
that,
the best
that was an issue.
quality management professionals I know this very well.
Yes.
Right? They would never do what you just described.
Yes.
Right. And they care very much about, hey, let's actually maximize the bang for the buck, which is what we're here to do as PMs.
Yeah, absolutely.
By engineering the right level of quality. We care about the cost of quality. We care about the benefits of quality. It is a business proposition.
That's what I was hoping you would say, Mike. Is like, so when I teach the quality part, it's like, what level of good do you need to go for? What level of good is acceptable to get because you have to get the toy out by, Black Friday. Yeah. Otherwise you're in big trouble value-wise. So what level of good is acceptable? And then build to that, build the schedule, get the resources, do all the things, the scope that you have to do, and build to that. But the problem is you have nervous Nellies and perfectionist Pats and in the process who are so care about quality, and they keep forgetting about, but we made the agreement that this level of defects is acceptable given these other things are higher priority. So
it doesn't exist in a vacuum, or shouldn't.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thank you for explaining that. Crystal, do you have any follow-up questions for Mike on that? Or are you feeling like you get it, the reason why?
I get it. I'm still a little iffy on the finance piece, and only just because of words matter, because it's like financial management plan. And then you go into the next process, estimate costs. I'm like, well, what? Like, so I'm kind of like, I was expecting.
Yeah, but we also said estimate value, and that hadn't been there at all before, which is kind of strange if you think about it.
Yeah, that is true. And
the whole reason we do it isn't to burn money.
That is true.
It's not? Oh.
Well, I don't know if you had a question. I did want to sneak in this question, Dawn. And I remember you said about finance partners, because absolutely, when I teach a lot of folks in the field, they're like, I don't really deal a lot with the cost management or finance management. I talk to my finance team, and that's the same for procurement. So we didn't separate out finance as an appendix, but we did in the case of procurement. So what was the conversation around that, especially with us being in the DC area, procurement land?
Yeah. Right. So one of the other pieces of guidance we got when we kicked things off was make sure that whatever we do, it's actually universally applicable. right? We don't want this just to be for the construction industry or just for the IT industry, or
Right.
like this has to apply universally for all projects, or else it shouldn't be in the main body.
Mm-hmm.
And procurement could not satisfy that question. There are projects that do not require it.
True.
There are others that are crucially dependent upon it, probably as the most important driver of success or failure.
Mm-hmm.
And so we felt like, all right, it's certainly too important to just not keep, right? We can't just delete it, in my opinion. And I think enough of my colleagues agreed.
Yeah, because it's a big problem for your schedule. When you have to get procurement involved, man, it's like, okay, it's going to take months more. So you have to plan
many
ahead.
industries are heavily dependent, like so much is subcontracted out in certain types of projects and domains, but not all.
Right, sure.
Right. I've certainly managed projects that required zero procurement. So if I happen to be in that kind of environment, why do I need to read about procurement and be tested on procurement in the exam? It's not actually going to help me.
So they graduate to a situation where they need to procure something.
For sure, which is why it still belongs.
Yay. Good job. Good job. Okay. So I think last question for you on the behind the scenes that Crystal and I were dying to know is, okay, so we get it that we're not supposed to be prescriptive, but PMBOK 8 brought back the ITTOs. So can you tell us about the thinking? And for anybody that doesn't know what an ITTO is, Crystal, you've been living and breathing this. Can you share what is an ITTO?
Every process has an input, a tool and technique, and an output.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful. So Mike, you brought him back. Tell us more.
So quick side note, one of my favorite sushi places in Salt Lake City, where my wife and I have a second home, is called Ito, ITTO.
Oh my God.
I forget what it means in Japanese, but anyway, I always think every time somebody talked about ITTOs during the authorship process, I kept getting hungry thinking of sushi.
That's hysterical.
So, well, the thinking was, okay, we also had guidance not to produce a document that was going to be thousands of pages, right? And that had been a critique of, from like the 3rd to the 6th editions, it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And there was a bloat factor that bothered a lot of the community, right? Okay. And so PMBOK 7 probably went too far the other way and made it ridiculously brief, and to the point where they took out some of the meat, right, that people wanted and needed, right? It was genuinely helpful to many people. And if I can't even download the 6th edition anymore, well, then what the heck? What are you going to do? Right. So we were told, like, bring some of that back, but be very careful not to bleed over and have a whole, 1,000+ page document. And so we said, well, there's a lot of tools and techniques that are important to driving maximal value, but we can't write entire chapters on them because we'll violate the bloat requirement. Okay. So we said, well, if they're tools and techniques, we have this thing called ITTOs already. We can just basically put them in there. It won't go through like let's take earned value, right? Some techniques really can help you maximize value by helping you make smart, like cost, schedule, scope trade-offs, like in a very disciplined way, right? Like, what is the value of being a week early? And actually calculate it and engineer it. But we didn't want to get into like a whole thing like earned value. Like, here's how to do it. Here's all the formulas. Here's some scenarios. Here's some examples. Here's some case studies, because that would be too much bloat. So we just gave them brief descriptions in the as tools and techniques, and usually as techniques, right? So, for example, there's something called a value breakdown structure that helps you identify like a minimum viable product type of scope. It's a discipline, not just a guess, right? There's a concept called critical path drag and drag cost, which basically says, what is the value of being a week late? How much value is lost? How much value might be gained if you're a week early? Maybe zero, maybe a lot, right? And that answer should factor in to how we manage.
In your Black Friday example, that's absolutely true.
Righto. So we didn't have the the space on the page, so to speak, to really go into as much depth as I might have preferred. But at least we said, guys, if you're looking for tools and techniques, here are some. They've never appeared in PMBOK guides before, but they're appearing there now.
So you got another vote. I think we're all glad ITTOs are back.
And hopefully we made them better and more useful, and
yeah, without so much bloat. Well, that's good. That makes sense. All right, so we have a question. Unfortunately, we don't have the name of the person. It's not showing up here. But please explain a project that doesn't procure things, since that was some of the great debate about procurement.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I've actually planted my garden without going to Home Depot some years. Like I'll have seeds that I'll collect from prior years, and I don't need new topsoil or new deer netting or anything like that. It's a simple home project, but nonetheless, that exists. I've worked on many a software development project where we already had the necessary tools. Somebody did procure them at some point in the past, and somebody probably has to keep them updated, keep paying the bills or the invoices that come in for them. But they required no procurement at all.
Yeah, definitely for me too. Many projects that are more service delivery projects that you don't have to acquire things for. You already have all the people and all the things you need in-house to be able to accomplish.
Or even I've done like advisory support projects where it really is just about giving the right advice to the right process owners to drive some sort of target outcome. And it's purely just human beings talking to each other.
Right. So thanks for the question. I hope that helped you understand that. So, okay. Let's wrap this up with two more questions, because I just want to know, what do you hope and what do you think, your fellow guide co-authors hope that practitioners take away from the new PMBOK 8?
That we do need to elevate our sense of self as professionals. That we are not just robotic executioners, so to speak, executors of a baseline handed down from on high. We are stewards of scarce organizational resources, the purpose for which is to generate the maximum positive outcome. Right? So like none of us is ever upset if our 401ks achieve far more than we had hoped.
True.
Right? There's no upside. There's no limit to the upside of what investors would be happy to accept.
Right. That's true. Yeah, absolutely. And people get really upset if they don't get the value they're expecting.
Yeah, and there may well be minimums below which we shouldn't do the project at all. And we need to be careful about all that and very disciplined. But the unlimited upside aspect is what attracted me to project management in the first place. My very first project was the NASA space station, and it's still flying and it's still delivering like massive impact, far more than we imagined. Now it went over budget, and there was also and it was quite late, but I think the value, that kind of value is really hard to pin down, and we'll gladly take as much great science as comes from that platform, even though it's over 20 years old now.
Amazing. Yeah. So final question, what's one piece of advice for someone who wants to become a truly effective project leader?
I think if you really embrace that identity as steward to drive maximum value, you will separate yourself from your peers right away. Business leaders will not look at you as the box checker so much anymore. They'll look at you as a business partner who thinks of things maybe even before they do that could help the business thrive, or the public sector organization, right? Help you thrive by delivering your mission.
Right. Absolutely. Nice. Yeah, we talked about that before, Mike, many times, didn't we, about becoming a trusted advisor and how you earn that spot. And this is definitely a part of it. Beautiful. Crystal, any final questions for Mike?
Not a final question, but I think an observation that really actually puts a bow on what you just said is that I absolutely love the inclusion of the PM mindset. I don't hear enough people talking about it because a lot of times people are caught up in the mechanics and not having the right mindset. So to your point about being that trusted partner, being a steward, that's all it wrapped into that mindset. And the definition of project success, that is something I've called out to people, that we used to say project success is when you met budget on scope, within scope, on time. And you said, but if also your stakeholders believe that there's value, that the people involved found that it was worth all the blood, sweat, and tears, that is success. Because we can absolutely be within budget and you have fractured relationships, we end up not using it. And so all of that wrapped into the definition of project success, I think is really huge.
And oh, by the way, sometimes your competition might beat you to market with that toy before Black Friday.
Right.
And the smartest thing you can do is say, guys, are we sure the value prop is strong enough to continue at all? Should we really throw good money after bad here? And most PMs, like the last thing they would do is recommend canceling their own project. Right.
Yeah. And we have to have the courage to do it sometimes. What's the right answer?
At least we need to be the ones that trigger the healthy conversations.
Absolutely. That's part of being a good steward. Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you for dropping all the behind the scenes for us. I really appreciate it. And you're, of course, welcome to hang out with us further, but we really want to get extra geeky with this. With Crystal Richards. So for now,
hang out for a bit, Crystal.
Yeah, all right. We're gonna sign you off for now, Mike. Thank you. Hang out with us behind the scenes. Thanks, Mike. Let's thank Mike Hannan for joining us today with behind the scenes news that you can't get anywhere else. That was awesome. So, Crystal, I know you have been updating your book. You had to get super down into the weeds of it all. You studied it. You had to talk about blood, sweat, and tears, right? You've been living and breathing and sweating PMBOK 8 and all the updates you wanted to make to PMP exam prep for dummies. So, I was hoping that you could share with everyone what you shared with me about the new standard. What are your favorite changes?
Gosh, my favorite, well, definitely the PM mindset. I mean, that is gold to me. I mean, I honestly tell people, if you embody those 3 dimensions, as instructors, we're always like, oh, these are the assumptions you need to have. And, it's perfect world project. But they're like, you don't have to guess anymore. Like, you're proactive. We've been saying that for years as instructors. So that's the intentionality for your real projects, but definitely on the exam, I'm going to pick the most proactive, answer. You are taking ownership, and that ownership is also about your embodying within the team to take ownership, that they are empowered and that you have that empowered culture. And then you're value driven, the things that Mike had pointed out, that it is about a focus on value, not just checking the boxes. And when you think about that, that is the aha for those of us in the field, but is definitely the aha when you're in the exam. That was the big thing that gave me goosebumps. I meant to ask Mike, it was like they heard us, right? When we were clamoring, like, the 7th edition, this is not it. It's like missing stuff. And they brought in the best of the 6th and some even elements of the 7th edition. What I liked about the 7th edition, they finally had examples. And so I really love kind of those mini vignettes that they've incorporated that were missing, even though there were 700 plus pages in previous editions. They didn't have context. And so I love that they brought in context. And then they sprinkled in elements of the Agile Practice Guide. Now, of course, they've just released the 2nd edition. So I didn't think they were going to do another Agile Practice Guide, but the 2nd edition has just been released. So you do have that as a reference point. But I mean, I always joke with people, the wizardry of keeping it this thin is amazing to me compared to previous editions, and they still kept in a lot of stuff. But to Mike's point, the ITTO section, I was like, okay, they have a whole section, but what they didn't do in previous editions, what I did like was, well, tell me, how is this ITTO or how is this output going to be utilized in the case of executing my project, or like giving me examples. And they did that detail within the 6th edition that I liked, to give us examples. They didn't do that. They just list what the tools and techniques are, and they list what the inputs and outputs are, but they don't specify. And I get it, because it's not to be prescriptive.
Right.
I like prescription still.
I know a lot of us.
I love that table so much. I mean, when I saw it, I'm like, oh, they brought it back. Like, this is so exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the way a lot of the PMP instructors teach is by that table, because they don't have the process flow that I created, most of them. So, I'm just gonna throw that out there. But So I am so glad that you have gotten through the gauntlet of updating the guide, and now it's out for pre-order, right? So so everybody, if you're not clear, you're just getting here, Jonathan, we're talking about PMBOK 8, and Crystal is now putting out the second edition with Wiley of PMP Exam Prep for Dummies. So so just a mention there in case you have anybody or you yourself are looking to get your PMP in the upcoming months, check out that and definitely get it pre-ordered. So Crystal, I call this the money slide. So can you cue up the money slide? Because I was like, how are we going to explain all these changes? Because as Mike discussed, there are some significant changes for us as practitioners that we should know about in PMBOK 8. So for somebody familiar with previous editions, which is many of the folks on the call that were saying, hey, I studied under 3, 4, 6, etc. And so I hope that you can take us through this this slide, because I just thought it was a brilliant way to see the framework, and I'm so visual like many of us. So if Crystal, you're able to cue that up.
I have it queued up.
All right, here we go. So you guys, I love this. Please let us know if you love this too, but let's geek out now. Okay, here we go. Go ahead, Crystal, take it away.
So I removed all the animations because that's always too slow for me. But really what I want people to understand with the mindset, and it's within the standard, you know how they do, it's like 2 books in one. So there's a standard section and then the PMBOK guide section. So in the standard section, they talk about the mindset, the PM mindset, and it reflects the behaviors, right? How the project manager should approach the work. And there are 3 dimensions to it: the being proactive, ownership, and value driven. And what they brilliantly have done that I felt I was so lost in the 7th edition is they were talking about these principles, and as instructors, right? And I heard it before talking with other instructors, I don't know how to really teach principles. Like it just wasn't flowing the way that we were used to. What they've done now is said, here's the mindset. Here are the principles attached to each dimension of the mindset. So those principles are adopting a holistic view and embedding quality. Well, that's linked to being proactive. The 2 principles of being an accountable leader and building an empowered culture, that's about ownership. And then integrating sustainability and focus on value, well, that's around the dimension of value driven. And so the way to think about these principles is that they guide us on how to have that mindset. So you might say, well, what does it mean to be proactive? They're telling us that means we want you to look at the big picture, look at the holistic systems view, as Mike had talked about. And it's also Mike had pointed out, quality shouldn't be just like something separate that maybe we will have it. It's embedded in the work that we do. And that's where we're being proactive in the work, that we're not only building it, but we're building it right. We're building it that it will help us achieve the benefits that we outlined within our benefits management plan, that we have reiterated within the project charter. All of these principles, the mindset, they're reflected in the performance domain. So what us original gangsters, OGs, called the knowledge areas, they've now have been, and just as Mike said, in the 7th edition, they were performance domains, but they were still strange to us, right? It was like team and stakeholders. Now it looks familiar to us as the knowledge areas that we remember them in previous editions. And so what they're saying is that when it comes to governance, for instance, so what was formerly integration management, with governance, you are proactive, taking ownership, you're value driven, and those principles attached to each one of those dimensions of the mindset should be reflected in every performance domain in the work that you do. So my pro tip for those of you who are sitting for the exam and you're stuck on 2 answer options, that's usually what it comes down to. Which one is putting you in that PM mindset headspace, that I'm being proactive, that I'm looking at I'm selecting the answer that is value driven, and I'm taking ownership, and that you're thinking about that. And honestly too, I mean, I don't know if this was planned, Mike, but it's kind of familiar to the agile mindset, right? Remember, we have the agile mindset, you have the 12 principles, and then it manifests in different practices. So, and a lot of us could kind of attach ourselves to having the agile mindset. And so now we get into this PM mindset in the same fashion, where a lot of people felt that it was very mechanical, it was very checkbox. And this really puts it into perspective about being a good steward of the resources that are entrusted to you. And this is the mindset to have. So
I just love it. I really love it. I love this image. And we're getting some comments that Jerry says he loves this diagram. I do too, because it puts it first also. That's part of what I love about this diagram, that it puts it first, and it helps explain what all of us who have been, PMO coaches, PM coaches have said. Like, we need you to be a leader. We need you to be a leader. You're not a project manager, you're a leader. And I saw some comments like that from Rich too, a little bit earlier. And so this says, well, what does that mean in the project context, when usually you don't have anybody that reports to you? And there are peers of you who are saying, but you're not my boss, and you want me to do what? And so it's a very difficult space to be in as a project manager. But this is telling you exactly what we've all been telling you, all of your PM elders, that we need you to be a leader. So I love it that they put this in to PMBOK 8. So finally, so well done, Mike and team. Very nice. Yeah. So the other thing that is wild, so for those of you just joining, performance domains is what we used to call knowledge areas, right, Crystal? Yeah. Yep. And so there used to be 10. There are 10 on my process flow. And now I don't see 10 anymore. I don't see 10. I see some that are very familiar: scope, schedule. We talked about finance earlier in the show, so get the recording if you didn't see that part yet. Stakeholders, I'm used to. Resources, that has gone through a lot of different changes over the years as well. It was human resources, and then it was just resources, and now I guess it's still resources and risk. So some A players in the performance domains that we've seen before are there, but some of the other ones, like communication, quality, they got embedded right into these. And so integration isn't integration anymore. Is that governance now?
It's now governance. And so the focus with that is talking about the governance from, is this going to take more of a kind of top-down approach, or is it going to be more self-governance? And that definitely has an impact on the ways of working and how you're going to do your work. And even if it's self-governance, it doesn't necessarily or automatically say you're doing an adaptive or agile project, but there may be, that's oftentimes what's reflective within the adaptive space. But they're also using, since I'm saying that word, they're using the formal terminology of, in the continuum of project management, you have your predictive, what we typically call waterfall projects, and then still sticking in that same kind of formality. Adaptive is the other end of the spectrum, what we typically call agile. And agile is the most I'll say extreme version of being adaptive. But when in the middle, and people always love to joke, oh, I'm on a water agile project. It's hybrid.
Yeah. I had a client say, we do water scrum fall here. We do water scrum fall. That's what we do. And that was an accurate assessment of what they were doing there, and it made a lot of sense for them. That was fine. That absolutely made a lot of sense. So funny to hear you say that.
Well, now it's formalized as hybrid, and I get it. I mean, even though as much as we would love to, and I'll stop my share here, as much as we would love to be fully agile as we think we want to be, there are a lot of elements within our organizations, politics, regulations that keep us from being fully agile in some industries and some of our projects. But I'm a believer that some aspect of agile, if done well, can really add a lot of benefits. So if we have, if we're minimizing our meetings from being, 2-hour marathon sessions, and we're utilizing the better practice or good practice of a 15-minute stand-up meeting, I'm not going to be mad. Now, I wouldn't say you're agile now, but you're incorporating these agile aspects or these adaptive aspects into your projects, and you're hybrid. and that's okay.
Yeah, and it's absolutely appropriate sometimes. I mean, there are projects, like take construction, something everybody understands. I mean, you cannot do things out of order. Like you can't build the deck before you order the materials, right?
Can't
You
do
have to have them.
the
Yeah, you can't do the roof first, right? Like there are things that have to go in order, hard dependencies that, you know, we need to point out and understand the critical path with that and all that fun geeky stuff. But yeah, so certain projects do not lend themselves very easily to Agile. But like you're saying, the way I say it is, let's take a page out of the Agile playbook and try this. Right. And so if it works, you can always try it, experiment with your team. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, you can be like, well, thanks for experimenting with me. Let's go back to the old way. We need to.
I think that is so important too, about why there's such a greater emphasis on Agile, because we know our business partners hear about it, right? And they're like, let's do Agile. And as project professionals today, we can't be fixated on, well, I don't do Agile, right? Like I need to know those tools and techniques because they're looking to me as the project professional. Yeah. So having this knowledge of Agile and maybe encouraging the organization to be more hybrid, that actually positions me better than saying, oh no, I only do waterfall projects. Well, you might find yourself updating your resume if you're not showing them that you know all the tools. You don't necessarily have to be certified. You're getting the training, or you're getting this exposure within now this latest and greatest PMBOK 8th edition that's now incorporating, and now with the inclusion of the 2nd edition. But, you know, I always joke with people like, like when you hear people like, oh, you can't be a Scrum Master if you're a project manager. And I'm like, why would you do that to yourself? Like, I don't care if you call me honey boo boo, like pay me my money and I will help you because I know how to use these tools, or at least I have a network of people and a network of resources that'll help the organization. It's all a learning process, right?
I love how you said it's a tool, because when the more tools you have in your toolkit, the more situations you can address very easily by saying, hey, there's a tool that might help us push through this problem we're having as a team, or whatever it might be. And whether it's from the Agile world or some other, I've definitely had lots of moments where I've pulled a tool out that nobody's ever seen before in an organization that's very simple, and it's an Agile tool, and they don't even know how to spell Agile. And they're like, this is brilliant. Like, okay, super. You know, we're moving sticky notes from to do to work in process to done. That was for some people, and it's great. I don't care. I'm helping them. That's what I want to do, is help them, right? So let's talk about people's careers. So we're having some very interesting things happening in the marketplace right now. The economy, for many of us, we're getting hit by this. And so when we can work on and show up for things like this and have a network of peers and learn more, we can be more ready for some of these changes. So whether you and I have talked about this, where we get asked a lot, what should I do next in my career? And so I think you too started as an accidental project manager, right? Yeah, I did too. And so did Mike. He has a great story about how he got to NASA accidentally. So it's a great story. So the question I want to get into a little bit is, knowing that we have a lot of different types of people on the call right now, the question that we get, what education is right for me based on where I am in my journey? That's what I want to get into next. So for instance, we get a lot of people asking us, me and you, about, should I go for the PMP, do Crystal's boot camp, do some other training on the PMP, or should I do a practical course like the one that I have dropping in the fall, practical project management certificate? And so if you're already a PMP, hold on tight, please, because people might be asking you what they should do, because you're someone that already went there with the PMP. And so you'll get this question. So we have some some insights that might help you when you get asked by somebody else, should I get my PMP too? So Crystal, for you, how do you answer that question? Who should get their PMP?
Oh gosh, you did tell me you're going to ask me this question. No, I think it really comes down to if the jobs that you are qualified for, and even that, I got to put a little asterisk, if of the 10 bullet points, 3 of them you qualify, apply. But if they consistently ask or prefer the PMP, then that's your signal. So that's typically kind of my guidance for people. Don't just get it because you heard it was great, but like get it because if there are jobs that you're like, this is the only thing keeping me, everything else I'm qualified. If this is the only thing that's keeping me, then yeah, maybe I might need to consider it. Prior to 2021, honestly, Don, it was more company pushed. So companies were sending their staff to get the PMP. They were supporting them. They were paying for it. They were paying for their time off for training. It's a different world now. And so yes, you can do it self-study. You do not have to do a boot camp class. I will never, tell people you must do it. What I always coach people, if you think it's choose your pain. So I actually say that in my book. Like if you're disciplined, you're tight on a budget, find a good online course, prepare well, take practice exams, you get the PMP. And if a recruiter was like, hey, we want to bring you on, you just need that PMP, that's your signal. If you're like, I'm going to get the PMP, I'm going to figure out how to, massage my background, that's a little bit harder. I've had people who worked for a business and their boss wanted them to get the PMP and their experience, and they're like, well, we'll massage. You're in a job and your boss is supporting you, but it's a hard jump to like say, I manage my kid's birthday party and now I want to manage this multi-million-dollar project.
Yeah,
I cannot in good conscience tell you that is going to guarantee you a job. Yeah. I do not disagree that this credential has changed lives. I have seen it myself as an instructor. I have seen people jump industries. So I do not want to knock it from that standpoint in terms of people's ideas, but just know what you're getting into. It is not a guarantee of a job if this is a complete career switch. It's a filter, right? Because everybody says they're a project manager, so it's one of those filters that people look at. It is, at least in the US, it is the kind of gold standard credential, whereas in Europe there are a mix of Prince 2 and PMP, and even I think IPMA has a credential as well. So it just kind of depends on a lot of things. So Crystal, my son is graduating, or he has graduated supply chain. I am encouraging him in healthcare when he lands a job, get his boss to encourage him, because I think that project management is going to be a great complement to his work in supply chain.
Absolutely. So we're at 1 minute before the hour. And so I just want to make sure that if you're leaving to go to a meeting that you hear about this. So
yes.
And then we'll continue our conversation. So Crystal's just updated her PMP exam prep for dummies, as you may have heard earlier in the show. She is actually going to be in person in Southern Maryland at the Barnes & Noble, and she's going to have her own book party as well. So if you want to have some time with Crystal, get to know her, see her in person, show up for her book signing, that would be super amazing. And so we just want to let you know about this. So Crystal, how else can we find out about, will you drop this in the chat later?
I will. I'll drop all these in the chat. I'm one thing I know about me, I'm not a good multitasker. So if you're asking me to do it now, I will not hear anything.
No, that's all good. You can do it a little
but
later.
I will definitely drop it in the chat for everybody. I know a couple of people from Southern Maryland are representing. So if you want to drop it in the chat, I appreciate that. Some of you have already received the Eventbrite link for September 12th, if you want to drop it in there, but I will make sure that you all have that information, because I would love to see you, even if you're not going to buy a book. I would love to see you and take pictures, and we'll pretend you bought the book.
But the book, as I've done before, the book is a great gift for anybody who you want to encourage to get their PMP, or who studied under the previous edition, and now they've got to upgrade themselves to be able to pass under this new edition of the exam. So it's a great gift for somebody who might need some encouragement as well if you're a PMP and want to pass along the wisdom. So I just want to make sure everybody saw that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And best wishes with all of your book promotions. And I know it's a lot of fun to meet people in person, so I do hope you get a great turnout. So I just want to answer the question the way I answer it. So who should get their PMP? In case this helps PMPs also who want to share this. If you want to walk into a networking room and say, hi, I'm name, and I'm a professional project manager.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be able to do that and you feel you are a professional project manager, then why not get it? Especially if you've got at least, 5 years left in your career as a project manager. Why not get it? Because it just is the stamp that says, I am. I mean, that's what PMP stands for, right? So that's part of it. And so for people who are not sure they want to be professional project managers, or they're like, I just want to be a better project manager, then I send them to the practical project management class that I have coming up in the fall. So let me know if you're interested in that or have any questions. You can DM me. And Crystal, you have boot camps that you run as well. I personally highly, highly recommend doing a boot camp for people who, and the rule is always know thyself, for people who have a really hard time locking themselves down and doing the journey on their own. If you're super self-disciplined and you can follow along with an online course and you're going to do it and you're not going to waste that money because it sat on a shelf and you didn't get to it and you couldn't discipline yourself, this is the issue, right? So having a real human live take you through it, who is like your tour guide to help you get the PMP on the first try. You do not want to fail it. It's going to cost you more money, time, and a whole lot of anxiety. Then I highly recommend boot camp. So Crystal, do you have any boot camps coming up?
Yes, we're me and my team, we're putting the schedule together. So we'll have some boot camps on the schedule for September through December. And one of the things I would also add to that, Dawn, listen to your instructor. Like if they say, do this, do that. If they say, take this practice exam, take it. Like you spent the time and the money for a boot camp that it just isn't like, it's not great if you're not listening to them. So even if it's not me, listen to your instructor. They have been around the block a long time. They know what it's like. And just listen to them. So I've had people like, oh, I just only did like 20 question practice exams and I'm just going to go in there and, cross my fingers. No.
That's don't do that. No, don't do that. It's the equivalent to winging it. And the thing about exams is, even though, so I see a question that came in from Diane, and this is great. This is a great question.
Yes, this is a great example.
Right. So Diane says she's considering the PMP after 20 plus years of project program and PMO leadership. And she's currently between roles. And this happens a lot where you're just, you're cranking, you're a professional in this, you're doing the thing. And she's got a little time on her hands. And so she's finding that not having the credential may be creating a hiring market barrier, which Crystal, you talked about that a little bit ago. And so 2 questions from Diane is there a course or resource you recommend specifically for completing the PMP application and translating extensive real-world experience into what PMI is looking for? And if audited, what are the options for someone who no longer has a current manager who can or will verify your experience? So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So do most instructors, I used to when I instructed the PMP, I gave advice in my boot camps about how to apply for the exam. Do you, and you include it as well, right?
We include that. I mean, I would hope any good instructing company would do that as a part of the fee. So they give you tips and resources. To be honest, I mean, there's a lot of free resources out there that I think are pretty credible. Like, even on Reddit, someone could tell you how, like, this is what you need to say. I mean, my quick tips for you are, say what you did. So don't say what the team did. Say, I did this, I managed this. Do it based on the 5 focus areas now. Say, this is what you did to initiate. This is what you did to plan, execute, monitor, control, and close. And even if they're agile projects, that was something that was interesting, because I do think it was very smart that they called it focus areas, because we do all those 5 focus areas even in agile. You initiate, you plan, you do executing, you do monitoring, controlling,
smaller cycles,
build test, and at the end of the sprint, you're doing a closure of that sprint. So I think it was very, very smart, because the process groups sounded old school. It sounded very prescriptive, like process, and that's not our thinking. So all that to say is, even if you worked on agile projects, still describe what you did in those 5 focus areas, and they're looking for you to tell them what the outcome was. And it's okay if the project was terminated. You still spent all those hours on that project, and tell them what the objective was. So
so the advice I got before that I had passed along, so I'm wondering if it's still true for Diane and others, is to use their language. So even if I think that's what you're getting at, right? So even if your organization called it, a retrospective, if you need to say, hey, I did closing, like
we had a lessons learned conversation.
I did lessons learned. You called it something else, right? So try to go through it and use their language as you do their experience. The other thing that I used to be true, and I wonder if it still is, Crystal, is when you're giving your experience, especially for somebody like Diane, who has so much experience, like, where do I even start with all this awesome experience that Diane has? Is I picked the biggest levels of experience and then stopped. Like, don't give them all 20 years. Don't, because you don't need to. Oh, you get over what they're asking for in that third one or whatever it is, and then stop.
You have 250 to 500 words. Like, they don't want a dissertation. They don't even need the details. And I saw something interesting on LinkedIn that they were asking, but they don't need the details. Even if you worked on security or military, like I've trained a lot of military folks that did a lot of projects in Afghanistan. As it just say Middle East, if that's, now I realize it's not something I probably should say, but, somewhere, in a location, but we build a bridge. That's all they need to know. And their drop down, especially when they ask about budget, well, you might not remember the budget. You can just say confidential. That's just, as I like to say, that's PMI being nosy. They just want to be able to say, we have this many number of PMs and they work on these types of projects, mirroring, this much of dollars. But that is not a requirement. And, it's only the audit piece, the second part to Diane's question. Honestly, the audit is like you drew the short straw. I think the word on the street is like maybe a 10% audit process. But what I have heard is that don't keep going in and out of the system, of the PMI system, working on your application. Do it first on Word. Then when you're ready, cut and paste. So it's just a one and done, because maybe like all that, back and forth in the system might trigger them, but that's folklore. I don't know if it's for true, but a Word document makes your life easy, that you can send it to someone as opposed to, having to download the document.
That's just good for yourself to have. So you remember what you submitted and so forth as well. But
Don, let me just add, there's a difference between your application being audited, which is just, you got lucky,
random,
or you got a kickback because you said the wrong words or used red flags, like the team did this and we did this. It's I did this. And what I always, especially knowing with your experience, Diane, talk about the projects you managed. even if don't worry about what your title is, and this is for everybody. If your title was something different, but your role on the project is I led this project, or I was the project manager to do X, Y, and Z. You don't even have to say, well, I was the project director, because sometimes they get a little funny when you start because they're like, maybe you should go after the PGMP. Maybe you were managing a program. Just I was the project manager.
Right. Yeah, use their words.
In my language. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So not including the PMO experience would probably make some sense for her.
Yeah. Like there was just talk about the project within the PMO.
Yeah, great. So Diane, I hope that helped you. And so let's wrap up this conversation. So Jana did put thank you under my name. So that's Jana back there in the background. Thanks, Jana.
Yes.
She put in, dropped it in the chat for you if you want to meet Crystal in person and celebrate PMP exam prep for dummies coming out. She put some of those links in the chat there. And there is a virtual party on September 12th as well. Right, Crystal?
That's an in-person party.
Oh, it's an in-person. It's not virtual.
Yes.
Wow. Oh, that's going to be great. Definitely. I wish
Baltimore, Fells Point. So
hey, Fells Point is so fun. Oh, that is going to be wonderful. So definitely sign up. Mark your calendars for some of Crystal's events if you can make it in the DC area. Please come out and say hi to Crystal. She'd love to meet you. And so you can also pre-order Crystal's new book, PMP Exam Prep for Dummies, the 2nd edition, updated with all the PMBOK 8 goodness and tips, pro tips, like she was just giving Diane. Please go ahead and pre-order it on, as Dr. Mike Clayton says, on Amazon or better bookstores, whichever. I just love that he says that. It makes me laugh too. And so we've also got some other items from Crystal that you can check out. So for those of you interested in getting your PMP, she's got a PMP self-study kit, and it's designed to complement your 35 contact hour PMP exam preparation training and help you prepare with confidence. So Jana, if you could drop that in the chat as well, since that's available now for folks, and pass it along, PMPs, to anyone that you think should get their PMP as well. And so for any of you looking for practical project management training, so if you're like, nah, PMP isn't for me, I don't want to shake hands and say, hi, I'm a professional project manager, I have some other things to do, but I want to understand how the world of projects works, I have now opened my practical project management certificate course in October. It starts, it's only 2 hours a week for 8 weeks. And if you're curious about it, let me know. Drop your PPM instead of PMP, practical project management, drop PPM in the chat or DM me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have about whether or not that's right for you, send you some materials. So with that, thank you, Crystal. And thank you, Mike Hannan, also, who was on with us earlier, giving us all the scoop on the behind the scenes for the PMBOK 8 and how one of these global gold standards gets put together. Very fascinating news from him, I thought. So Crystal, thank you for being back on in Project Land to talk about and geek out a little bit on PMBOK 8 and share with us all the wisdom from your blood, sweat, and tears updating the PMP Exam Prep for Dummies book. Thank you.
My pleasure. It is great. And for those of you, the PPM with Dawn is phenomenal. It's great. I took it, and as an instructor, I'm like, this is gold. So
thank you. Yeah, we get real practical about the human side and how to get people to work with you in the real world. That's the big focus there. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. We hope you got some value today. If you did, please make sure to follow Mike Hannan and Crystal Richards and me for more tips in Project Land. And for news about our next events, you can also go to PMOtraining.com/contact-us. So Jana, if you could drop that in the chat as well to get on our newsletter so you can be invited to our future events as a VIP. Thanks, everybody, for joining us in Project Land today. We are wishing you great success in Project Land and beyond. Bye for now.